Alright, going over a build for every single Exalted Frame in the game. All of these will have at least one build that is Exalted oriented. So for example, Garuda Talons, most people don't use the Talons, there will be a Talon build. But there will also be the normal build, so like Garuda B-Surge, Sevagoth nuking, right? Stuff like that. Cyte Sobek. So it will be the actual Exalted build, and then any other builds I would recommend that are still Exalted Frames. There's gameplay footage for every single build I list in this video, but this video will not have all of that footage. That will be in the unlisted video in the description. So all of these ran 3 minutes in MOT, and then some of them ran a Cascade level cap run solo. I will have all the Cascade ones in this video, and then I will have the MOT footage in the background of this video. For the full unedited footage, that will be in the description as an unlisted video. This is my recommended Hildryn build. The only necessary mod here is Aegiscale. It's an augment that gives Balefire an alternate fire. This is how you do most of your killing. I would recommend Arcane Velocity for fire rate, and then I would recommend putting Nourish over Haven for your subsume. The shards are just 5 Talvor's Crimson shards, all on strength. This is the Balefire build. I would really recommend Prime Fulmination, and then the arcane of choice is Enervate. Here's what it looks like in Sim. Remember, it gets around 250 kpm. All kpms are listed at the start of the video, and there's a lot more footage in the unlisted video in the description. Here's my Sevagoth Nuke build. This is what I would recommend that you run. You do really need the 2 augment mods, Shadow Haze and then Dark Propagation. I would recommend Roar as a helmet, and then you want to use 5 strength shards. On top of that, you want to use Chain Sling for extra strength, and then you want to run a Huras Brow for survivability, and then here are the Huras' claws. Here's what it looks like in Sim. Remember, it gets around 250 kpm. All kpms are listed at the start of the video, and there's a lot more footage in the unlisted video in the description. So here is the Shadow build, and then here are the Shadow Claws. You can change it up however you like, you just do really want influence. I would recommend Naramon for the infinite combo, and then I would recommend running a Hound, just for, condition overload, priming, and such. The playstyle is just spamming your pull. Embrace is a 20-meter pull with no line of sight, but it is cone-based. And so it's really good. You just group them up, and then you slash. This gets around 120 kills per minute in MOT. The full footage for this will be in the unlisted video in the description. Here is how it looks like in Sim. Okay, Cyte Sobek. There's 2 helmet options. I personally like to run Cloak a bit more, but the other option is Shock. And you'd run Shock for Shock Trooper. It gives a lot more damage on the Acid Shell's DOT. As far as shards, you want to run 5 primary electric shards. And then on your Sobek, this is what I like to run. You have to slot Acid Shells. I really would recommend to slot for accuracy, just because it helps a lot. But you can change it whatever else you want. Companion doesn't matter too much. I personally run a Sahasa. Just make sure you slot Dig, and then Elusive Claws if you are going to run a Sahasa as well. So this is the Cloak build versus Thrax. This is Shock Trooper versus Thrax. This is Cloak versus Demo. And this is Shock Trooper versus Demo. So yeah, very capable in all content. In MOT, I got around 230 kills per minute. You can see the footage in the unlisted video in the description. This is how it looks like in Sim. So this is an unmodded MK1 Bran. As you can see, he can be good with any primary weapon. It's just he's best with Sobek. Alright, Cye Neutralizer. This is the build I would recommend. We do slot Gloom. That's mainly to make it easier to hit enemies, to help with crowd clearing. We do slot Materite to hit the max slow on Gloom. This is what the neutralizer looks like. Pretty standard. A little bit better with the post encore, but it's a one shot on everything either way. I do recommend Sahasa just for the extra energy. So Cye Neutralizer is really not for crowd clearing. This is a build to do it, but it's not great. The sustain on this is actually so bad that I couldn't get a full 3 minutes off of killing alone. So to survive in survival, you have to actually use the capsules. I was getting 80 kills per minute, but keep in mind, this is more human reliant than basically anything else here. If you were like really insane at flicks, you could probably get like 110, 120 kills per minute. I average around 80, sometimes like 75. Anyway, it's just not great. But what Neutralizer is good for is killing Thrax and level cap demos. So here is some footage of killing a level cap Thrax. And then here is some footage of killing a level cap demo. So yeah, really good for killing single targets, and it can be used in certain game modes if just playing for fun, but I wouldn't generally recommend using Neutralizer for crowd clearing. I would recommend using Sobek. And you could use the Cloak Sobek build from before, and then you could use Neutralizer for single targets, and Sobek for crowd clearing. That is mainly what I would recommend. So Nuke Jade is now way better than normal fire post encore. This is what I would recommend. I do run Hotshot, but it is pretty expensive, so you can just run Avenger instead. I would recommend running Impetus, and then we put Encumber on the secondary. I would also recommend putting Roar over Ophanum, but you don't have to. The shards are just 5 strength shards, and then this is what Balefire looks like. I do run Encumber. You don't have to. You can run Enervate instead and then swap Impetus for something else, but I really like Encumber here. It just feels way better and it gets better results. I would recommend a Hound. Make sure you slot Seismic Bond, and then here's the Hound weapon. This gets around 220 kpm in Mott, and it gets around 180 without Roar. This doesn't scale as high as some of the other stuff here, but it works fine for basically anything that isn't level cap, right? So just base SP, EDA, ETA, stuff like that. It works pretty good. It is way better post encore. And then I'll show the nuke in sim with Roar and without Roar. So here's what I'd recommend for normal fire. It got a little bit better with Encore, but it's not that much better. It's worse than Nuke for sure. I would recommend Nourish for your subsume, and then I would recommend 5 strength shards. This is the glory build I'd recommend. You can replace Prime Fulmination if you want, since it's additive. You don't really need it. And then I would really recommend Enervate. I would also recommend running a Hound with Seismic Bond, and then here is the Hound's weapon. It functions alright in base steel path, and it can scale a little bit, but it's really not that great. I would just recommend the nuke nowadays. And then here's how it looks in sim. This is my main temple build post elemental augment fixes. Temple is a lot better now. I would recommend subsuming thermal transfer for the blast damage, and then I would recommend running Hotshot, but it is a little expensive, so I understand if you want to run Avenger instead. I would recommend Aegis for survivability, but if you just want to use 3 really often, that works too. As far as shards, 2 cast speed, 2 ability strength, and then 1 equilibrium shard. This is the flamethrower. It is running Blast Tox, which is what I would recommend, and then I would also recommend running Primary Crux. It's really easy to upkeep, and it's really nice. Companion is extremely important. You really want a Nautilus. Weapon is semi-important. I would recommend Verglass. It doesn't matter too much. So they are quite a lot better now after the elemental augment fixes, because the 3 is now fixed, and then you can also use thermal transfer, so you can now run Blast Tox flamethrower, and that means you get Blast, Tox, and Corrosive from Archon Continuity. So you can force 3 proc, and that means that you can use Nautilus really effectively. It gets around 210 kpm, but in all honesty, this build is basically just a worse version of my Soulgate build. And that really is how Temple just feels. It just feels like a worse version of Soulgate, without the augment, of course. Here's what it looks like in Sim. So this is a more comfortable Temple build at the cost of just being worse in general. So the helmet is Ensnare. You just group enemies and then you shoot them with the sonic projectiles. The issue with the sonic projectiles is multi-shot and fire rate just don't work, so it's not super great. I would recommend Primary Crux, as that does help, and then you need to run Huras for this, right? That's what makes it comfortable, and these are the Huras claws. This gets about 150 kills per minute in Mott. It's alright. It is very comfortable, and you can also level cap with it pretty easily, but yeah, the other build is just better for the most part, as long as you don't care about survivability as much. And then Soulgate is better than both. So, yeah. This is what it looks like in Sim. Alright, here's my Ivara WoL build. You do want Concentrated Arrow, that's the main thing that you're using to kill here. I personally run Well of Life. You don't actually have to. xatas is usually more kills, but it's a lot less comfortable. So this would be the xatas build. As far as the bow goes, this is what I mod mine like. The main thing you want is internal bleeding and longbow sharp shot. For spectral serration, just make sure that you go into twice. And then I run Nautilus. You don't have to. It kind of messes with Well of Life, but it helps kills per minute quite a lot. So yeah, this is about 200 kills per minute in Mott, and it functioned pretty alright. It also works pretty good in defense and such. Just pretty alright all around. Here is how it looks in Sim. Alright, so this is the main Dante build I'd recommend. You can play it 2 ways. You can either let your Huras do the killing and spam Magus Anomaly, or you can use Tragedy and such. The gameplay in the background for the Tragedy, the Huras killing is more kills. Both will be in the unlisted video in the description if you want to see gameplay for both. You want to run Arcane Impetus, and then you want to have Roar over your Noctua. The shards are 2 cast speed and 3 ability strength. This is how I mod my Noctua, but the only thing that's necessary is Encumber here. That's so you can get stacks on your Impetus. I would recommend Huras, but you can swap it out for Hound if you're going to do Tragedy spam. These are the Huras' claws, and then if you are going to use Huras, you're going to want to use a Paris Prime stat stick. This is what that looks like. So, Tragedy spam gets 140 kpm, and Magus Anomaly spam with Huras gets about 190. The issue with Dante is he's more of a jack of all trades, like he's more of a support than for solo, right? Like his nuking isn't that good, and as far as Huras goes, Zephyr Huras is like much better for actual killing, because if you just touch an enemy, then they'll explode, and Nova Hound is a lot better for kills per minute, where without a Hound-driven weapon, you can get around 300, and then with one, you could even get like 350, right? So, while this is good, it's just not really comparable to other options. He's more of a jack of all trades than, like, you know, a master of one. Anyways, with that said, here is the Huras sim footage. And here is the Tragedy footage. Alright, so Noctua Dante. This is the build I would recommend. I am running Hotshot. It is fairly expensive, so if you want, you can replace it for Avenger. This is the Noctua build, pretty standard. Just remember, Cask Flare is better than Enervate here. So some people run Enervate. I would recommend against doing that. This gets around 120 kills per minute in mods, and it scales decently, so it works pretty good. It's not necessarily the greatest, but it's pretty fun in my opinion. Here is the sim footage. Alright, so Excalibur Light Spam. This is the build I would recommend. You do have 3 basically necessary augment mods, which are Warrior's Rest, so your roar doesn't reset, and then Chromatic Blade for the insane status chance, and then Furious Javelin for the insane melee damage. We are running Aegis here for survivability. Shield gating is a little sketchy without it. This is the EB build. You do really want melee influence, just because it is very broken. I would also recommend running a Hound, just for condition overload. And then this is the Hound weapon. Excalibur also has a few bugs. I'll have them all on screen, but just know that light spam is better than it should be. This is how it looks in Sim. Alright, so /dash Excalibur. This is what the build looks like. There are 3 mandatory augments. Warrior's Rest to not reset Roar. Chromatic Blade for the status chance. And then Furious Javelin for the insane melee damage. The helmet is Roar, because it helps a lot with influence. And then the shards are 5 electric melee damage shards. This is the EB build if you do have Naramon. If you do not have Naramon, then you'll run this EB build, just because, you know, combo duration. This is what it looks like in Sim.
Okay, so Wukong. I personally run Slide. I would reserve Slam for something like Titron. The helmet is Roar. The shards are just 5 melee damage shards. I would recommend Naramon. And then this is the staff build. Just remember, melee influence, very broken. I would recommend a Hound for condition overload. And then here's the Hound's weapon. This gets around 150, 160 kpm. It's a little bit more variable because it's sliding, and so you're moving around a lot more. But I can pretty consistently get 150, 160. Overall, it's alright, but I would say just stick to Slam with stuff like Titron and Magistar and such. Slam is basically getting a buff in June, and that we'll be able to do more damage with Neuromods, and we'll have more radius at the cost of spamability, but it's pretty rare for people to actually like slam macro spam. But yeah, I'd usually just recommend Slam for him, but Slide works pretty alright. Here is how it looks in Sim. Okay, so Garuda Talons, this is the build I'd recommend. This is kind of just a copy-paste of the Wukong staff build. It's just slide spam. The helmet is Roar. The shards are 5 melee damage. You ideally want Naramon. Here are the talons. Once again, you want melee influence. And then I would recommend a Hound for condition overload. And here's the Hound weapon. It performs basically the exact same as Wukong. It is around 150, 160 kpm. It varies a little because you are sliding around, but it's basically the exact same performance as Wukong's staff. Here is how it looks in Sim. Alright, so Garuda Breach Surge. This is the build I would recommend. Necessary augment, blending talons. It works pretty silly with Breach Surge, and that's why it's really good. So yeah, Subsume is Breach Surge, and the shards are just 2 cast speed, 3 ability strength. Alright, so the actual combo to use is you press your 1, you jump, then you Breach Surge. then you jump again, then you press 4, then you hold 1, and then you release. This is what it looks like in Sim. Alright, Mesa's a lot better post-Encore because she can now use Fortifier for more survivability and Hot Shot for more crit chance. You do slot Muzzle Flash for survivability. I would recommend Hot Shot. If you do not have it, then Avenger. The recommended subsume is Nourish. You could use like Pillage instead, but I prefer Nourish. Shards are 5 Topaz, and then these are the regulators. The main thing being Fortifier. You can use secondary outbursts for more damage, but Fortifier feels much better. Companion choice doesn't matter too much. I'd recommend Nautilus, but you could run a Hound instead. Here is my Verglass. This gets around 150 kpm in Mott pretty consistently. The main thing that you don't really see here is there's not much of a difference in a place like Mott, right? Because there's the 2 Xmas cap, so you're not really getting the whole Fortifier benefit, and these enemies kind of fold like tissue paper anyways. But nowadays, she feels much better in stuff like EDA, ETA, so yeah, pretty cool. Here is what she looks like in Sim. Okay, Titanium Melee. So this is what it looks like. We are slotting Razorwing Blitz for attack speed and Spellbound Harvest for energy, since our companion is missing. We are going to slot Impetus to take advantage of the free secondary Exalted slot. The helmet is Roar, and the shards are 5 purple. Gonna run Naramon for the combo duration, and then this is what the melee looks like. Just remember, it's another influence one. The secondary, we're putting on Encumber so that we can take advantage of Impetus. This is usually around 140, 150 kpm in Mott. It's not that great, but it's whatever. This is how it looks like in Sim. Okay, Titania secondary. So we are once again slotting Razorwing Blitz for fire rate. We are slotting Spellbound Harvest for energy, since no companion. We are slotting Pistolier, as it's pretty much necessary. And then we're also slotting Precision. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. We are running xatas. That's because it interacts very good with Blast. And then Shards are just 2 casting speed, 3 ability strength. The actual build is just this. It is Blast Tox. You can change it up however you want. You do really want Enervate, because Enervate is very funny with Blast. So this is around 100 kills per minute in Mott, but it scales to level cap. Like, it almost instantly shreds Thorax. It's pretty fun to play. Just remember to upkeep your 2. I will show you how to do that real quick. So you have to upkeep all your 2 buffs, or you won't have enough Razor Flies to actually, like, often have them steal aggro. This is what it looks like in Sim. Alright, this is Baruuk's build. He does have 2 necessary augments, Elusive Retribution and Reactive Storm. His helmet is Roar. His shards are 4 melee, 1 cast speed. And then I would recommend Naramon. Here is what the punch version of his Exalted looks like. This is the way I play him and the way I'd recommend playing him. But alternatively, you can run Slam, and this is what that looks like. I'm running Panzer in the footage just because it can be kind of hard to passively upkeep the restraint bar with a Hound, but a Hound would be ideal. So he gets around 130 kills per minute in Mott. I don't personally like Baruuk all that much, but he does scale really well with Slam. Like, if you want to take him to level cap, you certainly can. The main issue is his survivability is based on like where you look, and then if you run a Hound, you'll get too much radiation, so you can no longer like passively build restraint. You have to actively do it. It's just extremely annoying, and I would say most of the time I would recommend just running Excal. But if you just really like Baruuk, then yeah, you can run the punch or slam. This is how both of those look like in Sim. Alright, so Valkyr. I will talk about the rework in just a minute. For now, this is what I would recommend. I would recommend running Arcane Battery for energy, and then I would recommend Roar for the helmet. I would recommend running Naramon for the combo duration, and Shards are just 5 electric. This is the Talons build. It's just slide spam. I would recommend running Influence over Exposure as it feels better and performs better, but if you just want to offload Corrosive, then you can do that. I would recommend a Hound, and then here is my Hound's weapon. This gets around 120 kills per minute in Mott. This will not change at all post-rework. The rework is basically going to change nothing gameplay style-wise or survivability-wise unless you're level capping. It is technically a nerf, but it's not really the end of the world. So I made a recreation of max strength Valkyr post-rework, and I'm going to show some clips of it. So this is tanking in Sim at 5 times speed. As you can see, very comfortable. This is tanking in Mott at 2 times speed. This is tanking in EDA. And this is tanking in ETA. But yeah, definitely not level cap viable. Overall, I'd say the changes kind of just did nothing, except maybe made Ripline cooler to use in like Simulacrum, and that's about it. So I imagine this build will work the exact same after the rework in all content except level cap. So yeah, don't be worried about that in June. Alright, so yeah, remember, unlisted video in the description has more footage. I would recommend checking that out if you want to see more footage of a specific frame. This video was edited a little differently than usual. That was mainly because it would be like 2 hours if it was edited like usual. Let me know if you did like it or like didn't like the editing style. I don't really care either way. This one took a lot longer because of the editing style, but I don't particularly mind if they take a minute. So yeah, just let me know if you want me to swap back to before, or keep this one, or change it up to something else, you know, just whatever people like the most. But yeah, all Exalted Frames are pretty good. All of these perform good. I did use KPM as a metric for this, like as the main metric, because that's what really matters most in a horde shooter game. But it kind of just doesn't matter. As long as you have enough to stay alive in survival, then you can basically do anything in the game at a reasonable level. Right, like anything past maybe 110, 120 kills per minute is just overkill. But yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions or anything in the comments, just ask, and I will try to answer them.